All right, so let's dive into this story about Barron Trump.
Okay.
Visiting a homeless shelter
Interesting.
in Indianapolis.
Mm.
He was just 18 years old at the time.
Wow.
And this was on like a crisp October evening.
Okay.
So not exactly your typical Tuesday night activity for someone from his background, right?
Yeah, not exactly. It's quite a contrast.
Right. So we're going to try and unpack
Yeah.
what happened and maybe even more importantly,
Okay.
why it matters.
You've hit on a key point there. The contrast, it is pretty stark, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got Barron, who's grown up with, a lot of privilege and security, stepping into a world that, honestly, most of us can only imagine. It's a situation that's got so much potential for some serious introspection, you know?
Totally. Yeah. It's not like he's there for just like a photo op or something.
Right.
Our sources paint a picture of him genuinely trying to like understand this world that's
Yeah.
so different from his own.
Yeah.
He's there with Julia, who's a close family friend, who's really passionate about advocating for the homeless.
Got it.
But Barron's not just tagging along with her.
Right.
He's asking questions. He's observing.
Yeah.
Really trying to grasp the realities of the situation.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
He's not passively present.
Right.
You know, he's actively engaging. And
Yeah.
that speaks volumes about his mindset going into this.
Right.
This isn't just a box to check off. It's a conscious choice to step outside his comfort zone.
Okay, so they arrive at this shelter called Community Haven.
Oh, okay.
And, well, it's pretty much what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Modest, a bit rundown. Inside, there are people from all walks of life,
Right.
families, individuals,
Right.
all seeking refuge.
Of course.
But there's this one kid,
Okay.
Alex, who really catches Barron's eye.
Here's where it gets interesting, right?
Yeah.
Alex is only 10 years old.
Wow.
And he's clutching this worn-out backpack.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's his lifeline. It's all he has left from his life before the shelter, you know? I think this simple detail
Yeah.
really hits home the idea of what it means to lose everything familiar and be thrust into this new environment.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what goes through someone's mind when they're that young
I know.
and faced with such upheaval.
Yeah.
The source material mentions that Alex had been separated from his family
Oh, wow.
and was clinging to the hope of being reunited with his mother.
Oh, God.
I mean, talk about a heavy load for a kid to carry.
Absolutely. And you have to wonder about the psychological impact of that kind of experience,
Yeah.
especially at such a, formative age.
Yeah.
Trauma and instability like that can have a lasting effect on a
Yeah.
child's development.
And this is where that contrast you mentioned really hits hard. Here's Barron, who's never had to worry about
Right.
basic needs like shelter or food,
Yeah.
encountering Alex,
Right.
whose entire world has been turned upside down.
It's a powerful juxtaposition. Right.
Raises all sorts of questions.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to bridge that gap in experience?
Right.
What does it take to truly empathize with someone whose reality is so different from your own?
Right.
This is where things start to get really thought-provoking.
Right. Because it would be easy for Barron to just observe from a distance,
Yeah.
maybe feel a pang of sympathy,
Right.
and move on.
Yeah.
But he doesn't.
Either.
He actually approaches Alex
Wow.
and tries to connect with him on a human level.
And that simple act, that willingness to engage,
Yeah.
speaks volumes.
Yeah.
It shows a level of empathy and a desire to understand that goes beyond mere observation.
Right.
He's not just seeing a homeless child.
Right.
He's seeing Alex as an individual.
Okay, so Barron asks Alex about the backpack.
Okay.
And, well, this is where things get even more emotional.
Oh.
Alex pulls out a faded photo of himself and his mom
Oh, wow.
and explains how they were separated.
Okay.
He talks about how his mom promised to come back for him.
But she never did.
Gosh, I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for him to share.
It's a heartbreaking story.
Yeah.
And one that sheds light on the invisible scars that many homeless individuals carry.
Right. These aren't just statistics.
Yeah.
These are real people
Right.
with real stories
Yeah.
of loss and hardship and resilience.
Yeah.
And for Barron, it's a direct confrontation with a reality that's probably never even crossed his mind.
I bet. It would be understandable if he felt overwhelmed
Yeah.
or unsure how to respond.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is that he doesn't try to offer empty platitudes
Right.
or minimize Alex's pain.
Yeah.
He just keeps it simple and says, I'm sorry, that's really hard.
Wow.
Sometimes the most powerful responses are the ones that acknowledge the weight of another person's experience without trying to fix it or explain it away.
Right.
What do you think?
I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
There's a genuine sincerity in that response.
Yeah.
That's far more meaningful than any well-intentioned but ultimately hollow words of comfort.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder,
Yeah.
did that simple acknowledgement, that moment of shared humanity,
Right.
plant the seed for what happened next?
Okay, here's where the story takes a turn.
Okay.
Barron, instead of just feeling sad or helpless,
Yeah.
feels compelled to actually do something.
Okay.
He asks Alex if he needs anything.
Mm-hmm.
Clothes, shoes, school supplies.
Okay.
And when Alex admits he hasn't been to school in a while because he doesn't have any supplies,
Oh, gosh.
it's like a switch flips in Barron's mind.
Now, here's where we could get into a really interesting discussion about the nature of charity
Yeah.
and its potential pitfalls, right?
Right.
Some might argue that simply giving material goods
Mm-hmm.
is a Band-Aid solution,
Right.
that it doesn't address the root causes of homelessness.
I could see that, but at the same time,
Yeah.
isn't there value in meeting immediate needs,
Yeah.
in offering a tangible sign of support, especially when it's coupled with that genuine human connection that we saw
Right.
developing between Barron and Alex?
That's a really valid point.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember
Yeah.
that we're talking about a single act of kindness here,
Right.
not a systemic solution to homelessness.
Right.
I think what's fascinating is how this act, while seemingly small,
Mm-hmm.
sets off a chain reaction
Yeah.
that has far-reaching consequences. But we'll get into that a bit later.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We've got to save some of the good stuff for later.
of course, of
But
course.
for now, let's just appreciate the fact that Barron, instead of getting bogged down in the complexities,
Yeah.
simply decides to act.
Wow.
He tells Alex to wait right there and practically sprints off to find Julia,
Oh, wow.
asking her where he can buy clothes and supplies for Alex.
And Julia, bless her heart, she totally gets it.
Yeah.
She takes him to a 24-hour store,
Wow.
and they embark on this heartwarming late-night shopping spree.
It's like something out of a movie, isn't it?
I know, right?
Barron carefully selects clothes,
Yeah.
a warm jacket, sturdy shoes,
Mhm.
things that most of us take for granted but represent a world of difference to someone like Alex.
Right.
He even throws in school supplies, a backpack, and a tablet.
It's almost like he's trying to give Alex back a piece of the childhood that's been taken from him.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this act so compelling. It's
Right.
not just about meeting basic needs.
Right.
It's about restoring a sense of normalcy, of hope, of possibility.
But what really struck me is that when Julia points out that not everyone would go to such lengths
Right.
to help a stranger,
Yeah.
Barron simply says, if I can help, why wouldn't I?
Wow. That's amazing.
It's such a simple statement,
Yeah.
but it really speaks to his character, don't you think?
It does. It suggests that for him, helping isn't some grand gesture
Right.
or a calculated PR move.
Right.
It's a natural, almost instinctive response to seeing someone in need. And that, I think, is what sets the story apart.
Okay, but here's where it gets even more interesting.
Yeah.
Barron doesn't want any recognition for his actions.
Oh, wow.
He insists on delivering the bags to Alex anonymously,
Wow.
leaving them at the foot of his cot while he's sleeping.
That's incredible.
Why do you think he did that?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It could be humility, a genuine desire to avoid the spotlight,
Right.
or maybe it's a recognition that true generosity comes from a place of selflessness,
Right.
not a need for praise or recognition.
Right.
What do you think? Why do you think Barron chose to remain anonymous? It's certainly an intriguing question. There's
Yeah.
a real sense of quiet generosity in that act.
Exactly, and that makes the impact on Alex even more powerful.
Right?
Imagine waking up in that shelter,
Yeah.
surrounded by all those gifts.
I know.
Our sources say he was completely overwhelmed,
Wow.
a mix of disbelief and pure joy.
We often talk about resilience, in the abstract.
But-
But this is a real-world example of how a small act of kindness
Mm-hmm.
can completely shift a child's outlook.
It's true.
Think about it. For Alex, these gifts
Yeah.
represent more than just material possessions.
Right.
They're a symbol of hope,
Yeah.
a sign that someone out there cares about him, sees him,
Right.
wants him to succeed.
It's almost like that act of generosity rekindled a spark of hope
Yeah,
that had been dimmed by his circumstances.
possible.
And it wasn't just about the things themselves.
Right.
The story mentions that Alex started opening up more,
Oh, wow.
talking to the other kids,
Right.
even expressing a desire to go back to school.
That's a classic example of what psychologists call a virtuous cycle.
Okay.
A positive action leads to,
Mhm.
positive emotions,
Yeah.
which in turn lead to more positive action.
Right.
And it's contagious.
Yeah.
The story highlights how Alex's newfound optimism
Mm-hmm.
actually inspired other children in the shelter
Wow.
to start thinking about their own futures.
So Barron's actions didn't just impact Alex.
Right.
They had this ripple effect that spread throughout the entire shelter community.
Yeah, it's like throwing a pebble into a pond
Right.
and watching the waves expand outward.
Exactly. And those ripples extended even further.
They did.
Remember, the source material mentions that the shelter staff
Yeah.
were so moved by Barron's generosity
Mm-hmm.
that they started reaching out to local businesses for support.
That's amazing.
And a volunteer even started a fundraiser using Alex's story
Wow.
to inspire donations for other families in need.
That's incredible.
Who would have thought that one late-night shopping trip could lead to all of that?
It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It really highlights the power of individual action,
Right.
even in the face of what can seem like overwhelming systemic issues.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah,
We often hear about the need for systemic change
right.
when it comes to addressing issues like homelessness.
Yeah,
And that's absolutely essential. But this story reminds us that individual acts of compassion can also have a profound impact, not just on those directly affected,
Right.
but on the community as a whole.
it's like a reminder that we don't have to wait for someone else to solve the world's problems.
Exactly.
We can each do our part, no matter how small it may seem.
Exactly. And sometimes those small acts
Right.
can be the catalyst for much larger change.
Yeah.
Think about the ripple effect we've been discussing.
Mm-hmm.
It started with Barron's decision to simply ask Alex, "What do you need?"
Right.
That one question
Yeah.
led to a chain reaction of generosity,
Mm-hmm.
compassion, and community engagement.
Okay, but let's not forget about Barron.
Right, right.
This experience clearly had a profound impact on him as well.
It sounds like it.
The source material suggests that he started seeing the world differently,
Okay.
becoming more aware of the struggles faced by those less fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
He even expressed a feeling that he could have done more,
Wow.
that he had only scratched the surface of the problem.
That's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
It suggests that his encounter with Alex and the shelter community
Right.
wasn't just a one-time act of charity.
Mm.
It was a transformative experience
Yeah.
that sparked a deeper understanding
Yeah.
of social inequities and his own role in addressing them.
He seems to have realized that it's not enough to simply acknowledge the problem of homelessness.
Yeah.
He has a responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to use his position and resources to make a difference.
It's like he's moved from a place of awareness
Right.
to a place of action,
Yeah.
and that's where real change happens, right?
And what's interesting is how Julia, his friend and advocate,
Yeah.
guides him through this process of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
She reminds him that it's not about trying to single-handedly solve the problem
Right.
of homelessness.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the power of individual action,
Right.
of making a difference in one person's life at a time.
Mm-hmm.
She tells him, it's not just about the things you gave him.
Yeah.
It's about what you showed him and everyone else, that people still care.
That's such a powerful statement.
Yeah.
It speaks to the importance of human connection,
Mm.
of showing compassion and empathy,
Right.
especially in a world that can often feel cold and indifferent.
Right.
And it highlights the ripple effect we've been talking about.
Right.
Barron's actions didn't just provide Alex with material goods,
Mhm.
they gave him hope,
Yeah.
a renewed sense of self-worth,
Right.
and a belief that things could get better.
It's like that old saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's more like show a child that you care and you give him the strength to believe in himself again.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the core of what this story is really about, the
Yeah.
transformative power of human kindness.
Yeah.
But beyond that heartwarming sentiment,
Right.
there's a deeper layer to explore here, isn't there?
Yeah.
The question of privilege, the limitations of charity, the complexities of social change.
Yeah.
These are all themes that we need to grapple with if we want to move beyond,
Right.
feel-good stories and towards meaningful action.
You're right. This isn't just a heartwarming anecdote.
Yeah,
It's a jumping off point for some really important conversation.
exactly.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about telling a story.
Mhm.
It's about using that story as a lens
Right.
through which to examine our own beliefs, values, and actions.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, it'll inspire us to create our own ripple effects of kindness in the world.
Yeah.
But for now, I think it's time to take a step back
Okay.
and consider what we've learned from this story.
Right.
What resonates with you?
Yeah.
What insights have you gleaned from this deep dive?
Yeah.
We'll explore those questions and more
Okay.
as we move into the final part of our discussion.
It's interesting how this story makes you think.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be easy to just focus on the heartwarming aspects,
Yeah.
but there's so much more to unpack here.
We've touched on the limitations of charity,
Right.
the question of privilege,
Right.
and the need for systemic change.
Right.
But what I find particularly thought-provoking is the idea of unintended consequences.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Unpack that a bit more for us.
Well, think about Barron's actions.
Okay.
He went into that shelter with the best of intentions,
Right.
wanting to make a difference in Alex's life.
Right.
And he did.
Yeah.
But could there be unintended consequences to his generosity?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it from that angle.
For example, some might argue that by focusing on one child,
Okay.
Barron inadvertently reinforced the idea that some individuals are more deserving of help than others.
Right.
Or that by providing material goods,
Okay.
he inadvertently created a dependency
Yeah.
rather than empowering Alex to help himself.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
Wanting to help without creating unintended consequences.
exactly. And it highlights the complexity of social change. There's
Yeah.
no easy fix,
Right.
no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
What works in one situation might not work in another.
Right.
And even the most well-intentioned actions can have unforeseen consequences.
So how do we navigate that?
Right.
How do we help without potentially doing more harm than good?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a simple answer,
Right.
but I think it starts with humility,
Yeah.
with recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Right.
It's about listening to the communities we're trying to help,
Mm.
understanding their needs, and working collaboratively to find solutions
Yeah.
that empower rather than create dependency.
It's about shifting the focus from charity to solidarity, right?
Exactly.
Standing alongside those in need,
Yes.
rather than looking down from a position of privilege.
Exactly. And that's what makes Barron's story so compelling.
Right.
He didn't just throw money at the problem.
Yeah.
He engaged with Alex on a human level,
Right.
listened to his story, and tried to understand his needs.
Mhm.
And while his actions may not have been perfect,
Right.
they were a step in the right direction.
It's a reminder that we don't have to be experts
Right.
or have all the answers
Yeah,
to make a difference.
it's true.
We can start by simply asking, how can I help?
Mm-hmm.
And then listening to the response.
And I think that's a powerful message for all of us.
Yeah.
We all have the capacity to make a difference in the world,
Right.
whether it's through small acts of kindness like Barron's,
Yeah.
or through larger efforts to advocate for systemic change.
So what's the takeaway here?
Yeah.
What do we hope our listener is thinking about as we wrap up this deep dive?
I think the key takeaway is that change starts with each of us.
Okay.
It starts with recognizing that we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And that our actions, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect.
Right.
It's about approaching social issues with humility
Right.
and a willingness to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And it's about never underestimating the power of human connection and compassion.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's not about grand gestures.
Yeah.
It's about those everyday acts of kindness
Right.
that can create a more just and compassionate world.
Exactly. And as we go about our day,
Yeah.
let's keep that in mind. Let's be mindful of the ways in which we can make a positive difference in the lives of others,
Right.
even in the smallest of ways.
It's been a fascinating deep dive,
It has.
hasn't it?
Yeah.
We started with a simple story about a teenager visiting a homeless shelter
Yeah.
and ended up exploring some pretty profound questions about social change,
Yeah.
privilege, and the nature of generosity.
And that's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it?
Yeah.
They challenge us to think critically, to
Oh, yeah.
question our assumptions, and to see the world through new lenses.
And who knows, maybe they'll even inspire us
Yeah.
to create our own ripple effects of kindness in the world.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Absolutely.
Catch you next time.